Okay, hey Gordon, how you doing?
Oh, good, good. How's the light looking? This is a little bit. This is actually where this is my office where I actually work. So this is kind of closer to the nerve center of it all.
Well, we can actually see you significantly better than we could last time. The problem is that we've got lights that are all on one switch, so you look a little hazy to us, but that's just because of our lighting.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool, cool. I mean, not good, but hopefully you can see me.
Yeah,
I,
we're recording this anyway, so we'll have a chance to play this back, and you'll be able to see it a lot more clearly with the lights off.
yeah, okay. Well, you know what, you guys listen carefully because the only thing is the way the lighting is there is making me look bald. I actually have tons of hair, but it's kind of an optical illusion that you can't see just because of the way Mr. Vadovic has the light set.
Okay, how do you want to do this? You want to introduce yourself, or would you
Well,
like
yeah,
me to?
I mean, I'll talk for a little bit. So, thank you guys so much for doing this, first of all. I always love communicating with Ontario because I've sort of transplanted here in the New York area. I've been for a long time. I actually went to college in New York City when I was 18, and been pretty much in and around New York City since then. So I'm actually in Long Island. You may have heard a lot about my area during Hurricane Sandy, right? Because we really got kind of walloped during the hurricane. In fact, we're lucky. There are still some areas around me that still don't have their power back after all that time. So one of the reasons I think why I get picked to do a lot of this kind of thing, like working with students in schools. Do you guys know that I wrote my first book when I was 12? Yeah, so it was actually my grade 7 English project in Thornhill, Ontario. Um, True story. In my middle school, the track and field coach had to teach English. They ran out of English teachers and they had extra track coaches. Guess whose class got picked to have the track and field guy? Us, right? So nice guy, good teacher, but at the time he had never taught, English, language arts in his life. And when it came to writing, he just sort of didn't know what to tell us to do. And he drew a blank. He stood there saying, "Okay, uh, work on whatever you want for the rest of the year." And it was February. And from February to June, we had a class period, 45 minutes every single day to write one thing. And I just sort of got into it and I started, taking it home and working it on at night. And my mom helped me. And by the time I was done, this was my seventh grade project, a book called This Can't Be Happening at McDonald Hall. You may have seen other covers of it. I mean, it's been around for a really long time. But you know what mark I got on This Can't Be Happening at McDonald Hall? B plus. How lame is that? They gave me A plus, but they deducted one grade for messiness. But you know how I got it published? Do you guys get or remember, anyways, like Scholastic book orders? I was the class monitor for Arrow in grade 7, and I just mailed my book to the address on the book order sheets. You're kind of looking at me like, that works? Um, you know what? If you get lucky, anything works. And the guy at Scholastic who opened up my packet found, I mean, it didn't look like this, right? It was actually a stack of typed pages. Truth, my mom typed it for me, but he read it and he liked it, so he gave it to his boss, and she liked it. And a few days after my 13th birthday, so I was in grade 8 by then, I signed a contract for my first book, and it still took like a year to come out, but there I was. I was in grade 9, and I had this book out. I'm 49, right? So all this stuff is like 3/4 of my life ago. I mean, this book has actually been in um, French, Swedish, Danish, Norwegian, Chinese, Japanese, Portuguese, Italian, Korean, Dutch, and Greek. Isn't that wild? To see your grade 7 project in Korean or, Dutch or something. I love looking at my books in other languages. Do you guys know McDonald Hall at all? Right? It's pretty old, but um, so the principal, headmaster is Mr. Sturgeon. and his nickname is the fish. Well, in French, he becomes Monsieur Sturgeon, and his nickname becomes Caviar, which is not really a translation, right? I mean, it's fish eggs, but it isn't fish. I wrote this one book, kind of for little kids, called Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. Check it out. When Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire was done in French, the book translated okay. How do you translate the title, though, right? Because Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire is an expression, and it's kind of hard to translate. My translator told me that to put Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, word for word, into French would be like calling the book Teller of Untruths, Your Trousers Have Combusted. Isn't that wild? I knew this guy who worked for Pepsi, right? I told him about it, and he was like, oh, that's nothing. Remember a few years back, there was a Pepsi ad on TV, and the big slogan was, "Come alive with the Pepsi generation." Supposedly, when they translated that into Chinese, it actually turned out to say, "Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the grave." So I feel so bad about my my little liar liar. Didn't you guys know the 39 Clues series, right? So it's not all mine, but I'm one of the writers. Well, every 39 Clues book takes place in a different part of the world. And book 8, The Emperor's Code, that's one of the ones that I did. It takes place in China. So there's a character in the series named Jonah Wizard, who is he's almost like a celebrity, you know, like rapper slash TV star, calls himself the Wiz. So his big slogan is "Live large with the Wiz generation," but they have to translate it for the Chinese tour, and it actually turns out to mean Jonah Wizard makes your ancestors fat. And that's the kind of thing that you always have with translating. Like live large, it's our expression, so we know what it means. But when you translate live and large, like, you're just translating those words, right? They don't have the same expressions as we do in any other language. But anyway, it's been really cool for me because I got started writing as this project, kind of grew up writing for kids, kind of became my hobby and my summer job, and eventually my real job. And now I've written 78 books, including series books, standalone novels. I believe you guys read Don't Care High, which is probably the first book I read after I was in school in New York. And so you can sort of see the idea of like the Canadian guy transplanted to New York City. And then the latest is Ungifted, which just came out. Look for the blue book with the cute robot on the cover. The story of a kid who ends up by mistake in his school district's kind of super genius gifted academy. Anyway, I know you guys have some questions.
Yes, we do. We've done quite a bit of research on you and your writing, and we got a bunch of questions for you if you got some time.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, who wants to go first? Sebastian? Cool. Come on up.
Hi, Gordon. My name's Sebastian D. Simone. I go to Our Lady of Fatima. We just finished reading the book Pop. There's been a lot of discussion in our class about what happens to Charlie at the end. Many of us feel that it wasn't an accident. So was it, or wasn't it? Or did you want the reader to speculate this on their own?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have that exactly. You know, I wanted to leave it up to every reader's imagination what that final moment is like for Charlie. I mean, I certainly wanted to at least give people the possibility that that he just decided to take control of his fate because he knew that he was not going to be able to take control of his fate for long. But I also know that there's some people for whom that would be an enormous kind of an issue, and so I also wanted to leave the possibility open for someone who might find that prospect extremely disturbing that was not the case. I'm with you, but as you noticed in the book, I do leave it up to the reader.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. That's a great question, by the way.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Riley. The world has changed significantly since you wrote your first book in 1977. Teens have much more at their disposal for things to do. How do you change your writing to appeal to an ever-changing preteen and teen audience, or do you change your writing at all?
I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, obviously, when I wrote my first book, there were no cell phones, there were no iPads, there was no internet, right? The world has really changed in terms of options for readers. But you know what, though? If you also think about it, Harry Potter is since then, The Hunger Games is since then, Twilight is since then. I think that books are more popular than they ever were. Now, that doesn't mean that, you could sort of sit there and say, well, what's more successful, Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Call of Duty Black Ops or something like that? That doesn't necessarily mean that that books have to be every kid's number one choice for a leisure time activity. But I don't think you need to worry about grabbing teens or kids' attention more than you used to, just because I think that as we've grown up with more entertainment options, I think that we've also been using those options to choose reading every bit as often as before, if not more.
Thank you.
Sure. These are very thoughtful questions. When's the what's your favorite color coming? I was kind of prepared for that one.
Hi, Gordon. My name's Emma. My question is, since you started writing very young, did anyone try to discourage you not believing you could become successful? If so, how did you convince them otherwise?
Well, it's a great question, and I think that, I guess I don't really feel like anyone ever didn't believe in me. But my dad's a chartered accountant, and he's retired now. But I mean, he's a very practical guy, and I didn't earn very much money when I first started writing. I had one paperback book. It was sold only in the Canadian market. I couldn't make a living if I had to support myself when I was 14 years old. So I don't think he didn't. I don't think he didn't believe in me, but I think that he was being very practical. And my career kind of evolved in a sort of a very sensible way. So when I first started writing, it was a school project. I wrote my second book, Go Jump in the Pool, kind of to prove that the first book wasn't a fluke. And by then it sort of became a hobby. And it went from project to hobby to summer job, right, in high school and university, make a little extra money. And by the time I graduated from NYU and I had to sort of start paying my own bills, I had a number of books out. I was reasonably successful at it, and I could make a living. So, once I was sort of at that point, everybody believed in me, and, I was lucky. I never kind of had to make that choice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie. Some of our class had the opportunity to talk with authors in the past and have mentioned the importance of editing and revising their work. Can you describe the editing and revision process and how you go about to ensure that your idea comes across on paper?
Sure. I mean, editing is different for different writers, and it's, every book sort of requires a different editorial process. In the book Pop, I don't know, how long is the book? 265 pages or 270 or something like that? I would say 100 of those pages were not even in the first draft. So I practically wrote a whole half a book, in the revision process of that book. Now I have another series called Swindle, right? And if you take one of those books, especially one of the ones later on, like Framed or Show Off, those books are very, very close to the first draft, right? Sometimes you just kind of get it right the first time, and you don't have to do as much work, just beyond copy editing and little things here and there. So every editorial process is totally different. One of the things that I like to do in revision is, I tell a lot of my stories in conversation, so you have to make sure that your dialogue sounds like real people talk. I mean, even something as simple as, how does a character say hello, right? Does he say hi? Does he say yo? Does he say what's up? Or how you doing? How are you? I mean, I went to high school with this kid. Seriously, for 4 years, he never once used the word hello. He always used to say greetings. And exactly like that, too. Phone rings, hello, brief pause, greetings. Well, none of you know my friend, but don't you have a feeling in the back of your mind for just the kind of doofus we're talking about because of one word? Well, if you can get that much personality out of a word, think how much you can get out of dialogue. So revision is always a great chance for me to make sure that my dialogue is right. To make sure that my word choice is optimum, to kind of make sure that there aren't any slow parts, right? I like to write a fairly fast-paced book. I don't want to have any really parts that you have to slog through. So revision is always a place where you can kind of cut it down, pare it nicely. But beyond that, the revision process is about what the book needs. Sometimes it needs a ton, like in pop. Sometimes it doesn't need that much.
Hi, my name is Lauren.
Hi.
You lived in Canada and as an adult moved to the U.S. You said in an interview that you became a football fan and you incorporated it into your book Pop, partly because of the U.S. love for the game. Have you had any Canadian influences in your books?
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that my earliest books were extremely Canadian because that's when I was living in Canada, and I'm still a Canadian citizen and still have a really nice fan base in Canada. But I think that I mean, I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but where I grew up was real hockey country, and so I played hockey. I mean, I think I probably learned to skate when I was 3. And it's not like I'm this super athlete. I think, most people learn to skate like at 3 or 4 years old. I played hockey from grade 2 through the end of high school. And I wasn't even that good at it. It's just something I always did. So I knew about football and basketball and other sports, but, everything was sort of in the background for me. And when I first came to the United States, I mean, this obsession with football sort of came out, and it almost seemed like it was more than a sport. It was like a territory war, and it was a chess match, and it was a gladiator competition. And I wanted to write about that, that real kind of culture of collision football, the fun side and the dark side, right? Because of the condition which now has a name, CTE, right, which Charlie had. I mean, the early onset Alzheimer's. Did I lose you or freeze or something? No. So I wanted to talk about, very frankly, about the great things about it, but also the dark side of it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle. You've written a number of series and many books that are based in a school setting with young characters. How difficult is it to not fall into a familiar pattern of writing and keep your ideas fresh? In other words, how do you write and not fall into the same formula?
Well, I think that's a really good question, and it makes a lot of sense. Something I've kind of learned is the one thing you don't want to be when you're writing is bored, right? If you're bored writing, you write boring, and in that way, you're almost a part of your own audience. Like, if you can't even entertain yourself, how are you going to entertain strangers? So I make a deliberate attempt to write different kinds of things. I mean, yes, probably some of my most familiar books, Schooled, Ungifted, No More Dead Dogs. So some of those are very much like kind of classic middle school centered stories. But then, the adventure series, Island, Shipwreck Kids, Titanic, historical fiction, these books are a deliberate attempt to kind of break out of that kind of classic school setting story. And then 39 Clues is even different from that, because not only are you talking about, a multi-author series where I'm not even writing all of it, but also it's multi-platform. I mean, you've got the books, but you've also got the web game, and you've got the cards. And then I also write for not wildly different, but slightly different age groups, right? I mean, obviously, you guys are in grade 8. Probably you're not that into stuff like Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, because it's not really aimed at that. You're more into the older stuff. So that combination of trying new things, plus the added element of, is the book kind of humor or adventure, that I think provides the variety that I use to avoid getting into a rut.
Thank you.
Hi, Gordon. I'm Brett. I've read some of your books and realized you write to your audiences utilizing different styles. When you come up with an idea, do you know who you want your target audience to be, and does that affect the stylistic elements that you use?
I mean, that's another great question. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this for a long time, and I see how, you get like a slightly different audience with slightly different books. So when I start into a book, I kind of know who my audience is going to be. But there is also a degree to which the books kind of choose their own audience. And sometimes, as you're writing something, it will veer away from the plan and kind of become something different. And then there are some books that will sort of reach. They'll still be successful, but they'll reach a kind of a narrow audience. And there are some that will reach a large audience. Like one of the things I'm kind of amazed about is I just did a series on the Titanic, right? Like a kind of historical fiction adventure series. And I'm amazed at how many people care about the Titanic. It has reached, I can go into a high school and find kids in grade 12 who are obsessed with my Titanic books. I can go into an elementary school and find kids in grade 3 who are, they don't even really understand them, but they're trying to slog through the Titanic books because they're just so into the Titanic. On top of that, the Titanic books have the largest ebook sales of anything that I've ever done, and that's probably just because adults are reading them too, because that's the largest market for ebooks. So it's a combination. It's, yes, sometimes you choose your audience in advance. Sometimes the book sort of veers off in a different direction and chooses the audience. And every book somehow manages to find its own audience, sometimes that you might not even have intended as the author.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica. Many popular books are now being optioned to be made into movies. If that were to happen, and you've mentioned that some of your books, Swindle, Schooled, Born to Rock, are among some of them that could be, how much creative control would you like in the production of these works to ensure that they stay true to your original idea? Is that important to you?
Well, I mean, the way the movie business works is that once they buy the rights, they can kind of do what they like. So, there's a pretty... So your control over a movie is kind of limited. And it also depends. I think, for example, Nickelodeon bought the rights to Swindle, and they are shooting it now. Actually, in Canada, they're shooting it in Vancouver, and I think that they are staying true to a lot of the ideas from Swindle, but at the same time, they're making it fit the Nickelodeon actors that they have, who are primarily the people from shows like iCarly and Victorious and you know, like the Nickelodeon shows. So if you think about those actors, they're actually older than the kids in Swindle, right? So I think that one of the ways that they've changed it is they've kind of gone from, you know, a middle school based story up to a high school based story, just to suit the kind of stars that they happen to be working with. So you know, you do your best and hope that they stay true to the original intent of the story, but you know, a lot of times the producers have their own agenda as well.
Hi, Gordon. I'm Zena. And have you ever created a character or a scene for a book, then later experienced something that helped you connect with the character or scene? If so, what?
I mean, it's a good question. I don't know if I've ever, you know, if I've ever written a scene and then kind of nothing happened for a while and then it happened to me. You know, I know the older I get, especially having written, you know, like 78 books, it's not infrequent that I'll have a moment that I go through, you know, as a person, and it sort of reminds me of something that's happened in one of my books. Certainly, it comes up all over the place. You know, the one that comes up the most often is, if you've ever read the book Schooled, there is a scene where they're riding home from school on a school bus, and the bus driver has a heart attack behind the wheel, right? Sort of clutches his chest, you know, rolls out of his seat. Every other kid on the bus is like, ah! And this one guy basically just gets up, you know, steps over this guy's body, sits down at the wheel, and drives the school bus to the hospital, right? Saves this guy's life. That happens in real life. About once a year, you'll be reading the newspaper, and some school somewhere. Now, the kid doesn't always drive the bus to the hospital, but there is some place where a school bus is incapacitated because the driver has a heart attack, or the driver has some kind of a collapse or medical kind of issue. So, I mean, it certainly happens. You know, I can't think of a time when, you know, I wrote a scene and it actually kind of happened to me immediately afterward, but you know, life imitates art and art imitates life, and you're always going to find situations from, you know, made up stories that are either inspired by real life or things happening in real life that happen to match stuff in fictional stories.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fran. Technology has changed tremendously in both the creation and delivery of literature. How has technology impacted the way you create your stories?
Okay, I didn't hear the very first part of that. Sorry.
Technology has changed tremendously in both the creation and delivery of literature. How has technology impacted the way you create your stories?
Well, I mean, you know, when I was in 7th grade, you know, obviously I didn't write my first book on my laptop. You know, I wrote it in longhand, you know, I mean, 86 notebook pages. But so now everything is on computer. You know, you very rarely print a book until the book is printed. You know, usually you just email it into your editor. And nowadays, most of the revision is done on Microsoft Word. There are some editors who are like super old school, who will still print out a manuscript and scribble in the margins, but that's becoming increasingly rare. You know, in terms of the ebook market, ebooks are huge in the publishing world today, but they are not that huge in the kids publishing world yet. You know, a lot of kids have Nooks and Kindles and stuff like that, But they're not buying the majority of their books for ebook just yet. Although probably in the next 5 years that's going to change. The one way that it's changed my books, I'll give you an example. Hang on one second. I just need to adjust my blind here. I felt like I was in the sun too much. No, I'm still in the sun too much. Is that better? Oh, okay. My newest book in the Swindle series is called Hideout, and it comes out in January as a book. And what we've done is we deliberately created this book in 3 parts so that we could release the 3 parts as separate ebooks. They're just called like Hideout the First Adventure, Hideout the Second Adventure, and so on. So we're able to actually release the ebooks only on stuff like Amazon and Indigo and BarnesandNoble.com and that kind of thing, just for e-readers as sort of e-mini books in advance, and then have the regular book come out, you know, after that. So I think you're going to find more and more experiments like that happening in publishing as a result of technology.
Hi, Gordon. I'm Grace. You said you wrote your first book because your English teacher didn't really know how to teach English. Did any other teachers have a role in developing you as an author, and do you still stay in touch with any of them?
You know, I've had a lot of great teachers. I mean, my grade 6 teacher was actually, I mean, he didn't really develop me as a writer, but I think that he always gave me a lot of creative space. And I sometimes wonder if I could have written that book in grade 7 if I hadn't had such a really good experience in grade 6. You know, I have not been in touch with Mr. Hamilton, my 7th grade teacher. I did hear from his daughter about 2 years ago, which was really kind of cool because when I knew her, she was a baby, right? When I was in that class, but she's now a mom. It just goes to show how old I am and how old this can't be happening at McDonald Hall is. She is now a mom living in like North Carolina, and her kids are reading my books. And so she told me what he's doing. I think he's retired and he's living like up north somewhere, like Kirkland Lake or something. I mean, it's still Ontario, but you know, I have not really stayed in touch with my old teachers, mostly just because, you know, I'm in the New York area and they're more in the Toronto area.
Thank you.
Hi, Katie. You mentioned in one of your movies that you write the theme of kids taking matter in their own hands. What is the significance behind this, and why is it important to empower kids?
Okay, that kind of came a little distorted, but you're saying I always write about I often write about the theme of kids taking matters into their own hands. Is that it? I mean, I think it's very empowering. You know, it's cool to read about people in your situation who kind of break out of what's normally expected to be in their power and go beyond that. You know, whether it's, you know, kids sort of acting beyond the realm of actions that you would normally associate with kids, right? You know, in Harry Potter, you know, he's this regular wizard kid who doesn't act like a regular wizard kid. The entire fate of the world lies in his hands, right? You know, but it works in the adult world too, that if you're, you know, I don't know, from a certain neighborhood and everyone sort of expects, you know, that's sort of a limited environment to come from, we always especially kind of cheer for those adults who kind of break out of their origins and accomplish, you know, great things that they may not have been expected for. The other thing that I would say is a big theme, in addition to kids taking matters into their own hands, I also really like to write about the misfit kid who sort of finds his own way in a strange land. Even if it's, in the case of school, it's a homeschooled kid who grew up on his grandma's hippie commune, who is suddenly in this regular school when he has no clue what real life is like. Or in Ungifted, the ungifted kid who ends up in the super genius gifted program by mistake and has to get along even though, everyone else is 20 times smarter than he is. Those kinds of situations, I think they're just really, really appealing, and you can't help but root for those guys.
Thank you.
Hi, Gordon. My name's Rylan. I have read that the TV series Friday Night Lights was based on your book, Paw. Have you seen the series, and do you feel it did your book justice?
Yeah, I think that's a little confused. Friday Night Lights is actually based on the book Friday Night Lights. There was a book series based on my book series called the Monday Night Football Club, right? So, and that was a series called The Jersey. It was about 10 years ago. Friday Night Lights is actually something completely different. I wish Friday Night Lights was based on my book, because that's a really awesome series. But, that was sort of cool when it was going on. I mean, I wrote my book series, which was sort of a football fantasy. These kids get a jersey, and it empowers them to sort of become a football player for a day. I wrote it for the NFL, which was really cool because I loved the idea of working for the NFL, and I got Super Bowl tickets, and it was just like a really fun thing to do. When it was actually the Disney Channel who bought the rights, and they turned it into their series, they changed it a lot. I know someone asked before about what happens to a story when they make a movie of it. When they did the TV show based on Monday Night Football Club, they really changed a lot of things about it. It was still, I don't have any complaints about it. It was definitely a good TV series, but it wasn't really that close to the book series that I'd written.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sandra. In school, teachers tell us to write at the point. Can you say that you told the story and be done with it?
Oh, okay. You mean as opposed to rewriting? Yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely true that sometimes, very rarely, you write a story and you just kind of get it right the first time, and it's just done. But most of the time there's changes to be made, and there's work to be done. I mean, I've been on like a book tour for the last couple months for Ungifted, right? So, Ungifted has been through 2 rounds of revision. It's been through copy editing, and I mean, in galleys, it's probably been gone over by 10 or 11 different people at least twice. Okay, and I still, when I give readings from this book, I still occasionally run over a word and I think, was that the best word I could have put there? So you're sort of never done when it comes to writing a book. I mean, you gotta at a certain point let them print it and sell it, right? You don't want to leave it, hanging for years and years and years. But writing is kind of an ongoing thing, and it doesn't matter how much time you've spent getting something exactly perfect. There will still be a few words out of place, a few commas in the wrong place. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Hi, Gordon. I'm Alex. You typically write books for teens in school settings. Have you ever considered writing more books for an adult audience?
It's weird. When I was a kid, I always thought I would eventually write for adults. And now that I'm an adult, I am only interested in writing for teens and kids. I mean, I used to think the adult book was my sort of final destination. But I actually love the kids and young adult market a lot better. I'm not really interested in writing for adults right now.
Thank you.
Okay, we're running a little bit short on time. Our bell's going to ring. I have just a final question for you, Gordon, and we'll open up some final comments for you if you have any. You say the writer's job is never done.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do you actually shut off? Because, I mean, do you walk around with like a pad and just watch and say, oh, that would be a good idea, that would be a good idea? And is your brain constantly in writing mode? At what point do you just say, okay, you know what, I'm just going to take some time for myself?
Yeah, well, you're never going to be able to turn off your brain. You know, you're always going to notice things that are going to be good ideas. You know, I know there were a couple questions about technology. So one of the good things about that is if you keep a phone with you, you can just, when you see something, you can write it on your phone or dictate it to yourself. I tend to email it to myself, so it'll be in a number of places. But there may be some writers who just kind of go on vacation and they say, I'm not thinking about anything creative right now, but I'm pretty much always on.
Okay. Any final comments for any of these guys who may be interested in becoming a writer?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to thank you for your questions. I mean, these are really good. You know, as I said, I'm still waiting for what's your favorite color to show up. Or, you know, what's your favorite hockey team? I am a Leaf fan, which is, I suppose, kind of a discretion.
I'm going to have to hang up on you right now, I think.
Are you Detroit?
I am, yes, sir.
You know I'm named after Gordie Howe, right?
I do, yeah. We researched that. We saw it was one of the questions.
It's a long story, but my mother's father, who was born in 1901, was a Montreal Maroons fan, and that was the team that was sort of knocked out of existence by the Canadiens. So my whole family hates the Montreal Canadiens, even though we were originally Montrealers. So my mom grew up liking Detroit because they were rivals of Montreal. And I ended up named after Gordie Howe. But you know, I mean, I would say that first of all, the best thing to do if you want to be a writer is just to make it a part of your life. You know, write constantly, write every day or almost every day. How you do that is really up to you. Find something that works for you. You know, if it's keeping a journal or a diary or a writer's notebook, that's cool. A lot of people like to blog. I don't do any of those things, but I'm writing at least 5 days a week. So writing for me is normal, right? It's not this special other extra kind of thing that I do sometimes. But, you know, you get better at writing by just writing. You know, if you wanted to be a basketball player and you couldn't hit a free throw to save your life, what's your coach going to do? He can put you on the line and you're going to shoot a lot of free throws. Well, if you want to be a better writer, you just do that. You write, you see what works, try different things, and you just get better.
Okay. We want to thank you for your time. I know that you're obviously very busy. I know you mentioned football a couple times. Who's your favorite football team?
Well, we're New York Giants fans here. We've had some success lately, but this season doesn't look great. But one of the things about the New York Giants is that some of their best seasons are the seasons where they look terrible all season and kind of turn it on at the right time. So fingers crossed we're going to be able to do that again this year.
Okay, Gordon, thank you very much for your time. You obviously heard our bell. That's time for us to have a break. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thanks very much, Gordon.